Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Innovations in Cloud Media Processing, New Solutions for VOD Workflows, presented by Jeff Malkin, President of Encoding.com. My name is Phil Sandberg. I'm the publisher of Content+Technology magazine. And I'd like to, introduce Jeff, who is a fearless entrepreneur with a proven track record of growing technology startups in video, internet, and mobile sectors. Jeff according to his bio, is an acknowledged industry all-star, and he's guided Encoding.com to its position as one of the world's most trusted cloud-based video encoding services, with thousands of clients and 1 billion videos processed. Named one of the top 100 companies that matter most in online video for the past 5 years by Streaming Media, Encoding.com has secured its position as the leader in cloud-based media processing. Now, prior to Encoding.com, Jeff founded RAS Incorporated, which provided audio and telephony-based applications that have been distributed by leading wireless carriers worldwide. Jeff graduated with a BA in music from the University of Michigan and is an active musician in the San Francisco community. So we might be in for a psychedelic treat later on, who knows. Now, later on, Jeff will be joined by Zach Parker, Senior Solutions Engineer at Encoding.com, for any deep dive technical questions. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that very detailed bio as well. I assure you I didn't write that bio. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everyone making it out today to the webinar to learn more about Encoding.com. We're going to talk about some new features that we've deployed. Well, I'll describe the company in detail and talk about some features that we've recently deployed to continue supporting the evolving requirements for our customers who are managing transcoding workflows for OTT and broadcast distribution. We're obviously living in some challenging and strange times right now, so I do appreciate you joining today, and frankly, we all have to get back to work. We've been doing this for about 12 years, a little more than 12 years now, and primarily in the US and European markets. But earlier this year, we made a strategic decision and a concerted effort to start attempting to expand our business in the Asia Pacific markets. And Ben Morel is the sales executive from Encoding.com in charge of spearheading that effort. So if you're interested in learning more or working with us, Ben's going to be your guy likely that you'll be working with. My name is Jeff Malkin. My partner Greg Heil had this great idea back in 2007 for leveraging cloud computing to power video transcoding as a service. And part of my role here as president is I also manage our largest strategic accounts. So I'm on the front lines helping our large accounts deploy mission critical, highly scalable video transcoding pipelines. So for the agenda, I'm going to try to keep the presentation under 30 minutes, leave some time for some questions and answers. I'm going to provide a brief overview of Encoding.com and how we fit in this ecosystem. And I'm going to highlight the challenges that our customers face when preparing content for direct-to-consumer and broadcast or B2B delivery, and talk about some of the recent capabilities we've deployed to help resolve some of those challenges. So, one way to think about Encoding.com and how we fit in this ecosystem is to, answer the question of what does Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, Vimeo, Facebook, et cetera, what do they all have in common besides, managing these very, very large video streaming services? And, I don't know what the numbers are today, but, last time I looked, YouTube was doing about 150 million hours of content ingested every minute. And Netflix streaming 150 million streams a day on Amazon. So, just massive. But what they also have in common is that none of them have architected their video pipelines using commercial hardware and software encoders. Rather, they've designed their entire encoding pipeline using open source encoding tools like X264, X265, or libvpx, etc. And the question why? Because if you're familiar with using hardware and software encoders, you know that they're expensive. They don't elastically scale as your pipelines may peak and crest. They're not very flexible for integrating into the ecosystem and all the third-party technology partners that you might be using in your workflow, and they tend to be very slow to adopt new features. So instead, these companies have designed their encoding pipelines using API-driven microservices running in containers on general purpose compute in public and private cloud data centers. And this is exactly what Encoding.com has been doing for 12 years now. We're a transcoding as a service, cloud native. We basically enable most of the companies on the planet that don't have 200 video engineers on staff, like Netflix, to have access to a cutting edge, very mature, pretty powerful video encoding platform. We also maintain a team of experts who are not only experts in compression, but also in video workflows and open source tools as well. So just to give a little background, we have processed over a billion videos to date. In 2019, we ingested about 20 petabytes of video content. We're now doing about 1 trillion API requests a year, on about 50,000 cores. We're operating 15 or 16 data centers around the globe now. So this is just to give you a sense of scale and platform maturity. We've seen a lot over the years. So first, I want to talk about and describe, and most of you know this well, what are the challenges you're facing when you're preparing content for direct-to-consumer distribution? Certainly you're working with large files, and the files are getting larger, right? You're talking about high bitrate MES files, 4K, HDR, etc. And working with files of that size can be very challenging. You're trying to maximize your viewers, meaning support the greatest number of devices, greatest number of languages, using subtitles and whatnot to maximize your revenue, basically. You're dealing with languages, of course, and subtitles and captions, managing spiky volumes, especially if you're more in the news and sports media. The amount of transcoding on a daily basis can shift pretty significantly. Working with various ad support technologies to make sure that you are maximizing your revenues. Trying to be the first to publish, which for many, especially in news, is a competitive advantage. So processing very quickly. And for most, one of the biggest challenges is dealing with these evolving requirements, new devices hitting the market, new formats to support, etc. And managing these pipelines and managing all this content in a way that is very secure and that you're protecting your content. For B2B or broadcast pipelines, there are some similarities. Of course, you're also working with massive files. And even bigger, you're dealing with set-top box compliance. Subtitles can be very challenging to work with, and very restrictive ad platforms and ad technologies for broadcast delivery. And dealing with conformance and assembly, and making sure that that you're applying the security and the DRM and whatever it is that you need to do to protect your content. So I'm obviously focusing, for D2C and B2B pipelines on technical challenges, and that's what my presentation is going to focus on. But obviously, there are financial considerations, there's business continuity challenges, especially now, these days, and more. So, but for this presentation, we're going to focus on the technical challenges. So, Encoding.com is now running over 45 different media processing engines underneath our API. Some of them are open source, some are commercial. Well, most are open source, some are commercial, and some are proprietary that we have built. And these engines drive a growing suite of microservices. Microservices like transcoding, supporting, the ability to support every format coming into our platform and producing any format that you need for delivery to all these different devices or set-top boxes, etc. Packaging, whether it's packaging for adaptive bitrate, HLS and dash and smooth streaming, or DRM encryption, or quality control, or subtitle conversions, etc. And this approach for having all these different engines allows us to very quickly add new features and capabilities as your requirements continue to change. And for you to take advantage of the new features is quite easy. You've integrated our API into your platform at that point, and all you're doing is modifying the API call to take advantage of the latest and greatest features. So in other words, integrate the API once and it future-proofs your VOD encoding workflows going forward. If you were to ask the CTOs of our largest customers what they find most compelling about Encoding.com, I think this might be at the top of the list. The fact that we can very quickly add new capabilities and make it very simple for our customers to use them. So for over a decade now, or over 12 years now, we've been efficiently spinning up and down compute resources in data centers around the world, and spinning up as much compute to meet real-time demand. It's important for you to know that we are located in all of the Amazon Web Service, or the vast majority of the Amazon Web Service data centers around the world, because we can ingest and process content locally to any market around the world, meaning you don't have to send your content very far in order to reach our platform running in the cloud. There's great efficiencies both from a latency time perspective as well as a cost perspective. So basically, the way it works is that customers will integrate our API into their existing media asset management platform or CMS platform, and you will send us a set of instructions via an API call in either JSON or XML. And these instructions will tell us where the source video is located. Can be located in the cloud, in S3 or Azure, or wherever you're storing it, can be located on premise. And in that API call, you'll tell us all the ways you want us to process your content, all the output formats, all the output packages, and all of the other bells and whistle features that I'll touch upon. And then you tell us where do you want us to deliver the output. It's pretty simple. And then our platform will be talking to your platform throughout the entire processing workflow, so that and your system knows exactly the status of every job from ingest all the way through delivery. As a managed service, we actually call it a self-operated managed service. It's our job to help customers, take advantage of all of the Encoding.com features, that are at their fingertips. And, we're powering and have powered many, many thousands of workflows around the world for many different use cases, from premium content streaming services to news to sports to religious to enterprise, etc. We've seen many different workflows over the years. And we can offer suggestions to our customers to help them reach that holy grail. And that holy grail is to process high quality video as efficiently as possible, and successfully to maximize the number of platforms at the lowest possible cost, right? There's a lot of things to try to achieve in there, but a lot of levers to pull. We do custom regression testing for our premium customer workflows before every release. And again, we've been doing weekly releases for many, many years now. And, feature requests that you have don't get pushed into some, product roadmap that we might get to 6 months down the road. We think of new feature development in days and weeks, not in months and years. To that point, ours, Encoding.com, is a platform that was built from day one, cloud native, and from the ground up for high performance media processing. That's very different from hardware platform or software companies trying to migrate and become a service provider. It's just not in the DNA. And like I said, we have over 12 years experience optimizing every step of the way to provide the fastest, most resilient, flexible, and cost-efficient service, for powering very complex VOD workflows. And I should tell you that we only focus on VOD workflows. We find that that's challenging enough. So we don't focus on live linear, and we don't focus on players or CMS platforms. We focus 100% on VOD encoding workflows. So, we collaborate and work with many different media and entertainment companies around the world. I just wanted to highlight one here and a few on the screen to give you a sense of who some of our customers are. In the US, you may not know that Peacock, which is a joint venture with Comcast and Sky with NBC, recently launched their streaming service to compete with Netflix and Hulu and whatnot. Within a couple of months, they had, I think, 15 million subscribers right out of the gate. So we've been working very closely with them for almost 2 years now, ensuring a very secure, very stable, and a very powerful VOD workflow that has a lot of complex capabilities, as you would imagine. For this particular streaming service, we need to support not only subscriber VOD, but also advertising VOD. So that it can be quite challenging. So now we're going to focus more on sort of the meat of the presentation, right? I gave you the background on Encoding.com. I've highlighted a bunch of new capabilities here that we've launched in the last year or so that help our customers resolve those challenges that I mentioned earlier. We have weekly product releases, so we launch lots and lots of new capabilities. So I've highlighted a handful that I thought would be relevant to this conversation. When we launch new features, we always make them available, the documentation in our API, and you can find that on api.encoding.com. Within that documentation, just the latest releases, and you'll see everything that we deploy. So I'm going to dive right in, and first focus on Dolby Vision, right? So if you're familiar with Dolby Vision or high dynamic range HDR, there are 4 HDR technologies in market, right? There's Dolby Vision, HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and HLG. So and we support all of those. So, but I'm just highlighting Dolby Vision. We do work very closely with Dolby. It's just gorgeous video, as I'm sure you know. And now the iPhone 12 that just came out has Dolby Vision now native to iPhones. So we're starting to see more of our customers starting to transcode and process using Dolby Vision. So to get a little technical, you can generate Dolby Vision with Encoding.com. The source format that you will send to us that will ingest from you needs to be a ProRes.mov file or an MXF J2K, along with the Dolby Vision metadata. And with Encoding.com, you can generate, if you're familiar with Dolby Vision, version 5 or 8.1. What's great about 8.1 is that it also has the fallback version. So if you create 8.1 and the end user, the consumer, has a device, a TV or whatnot, that doesn't support the latest Dolby Vision, but does support HDR10, it'll automatically roll back and you'll have that, and it'll be supported in HDR10. As you would imagine also, these are very, very heavy, very fat files, very computing intensive to process. It's basically raw video. And by the way, we can package up the Dolby Vision content for ABR formats like HLS and Dash. But as these files are very computing intensive, can take very, very long to process. So which leads to the next feature that we deployed about a year ago, which we humorously call Ludicrous Mode. Basically, Ludicrous Mode is our ultra-fast parallel chunk processing feature set. Basically, it's ideal for very, very large files, HD, UHD, 4K, 8K HDR files, and you can output to HLS, Dash, and MP4. We take the large chunks, we take the large video, we chunk it into 10-minute segments. And I think I can show you this slide, might give you a little better visual. We split it into chunks. We process those chunks in parallel, and then we stitch it all back together at the end. So we're parallelizing all those different chunks, which will significantly accelerate the overall processing time. In fact, we're getting processing times that for Dolby Vision that are just off the charts and much faster than Dolby reports, from their own engines. So if you have content where, well, if your workflows where speed is critical, and if you have heavy files, even if it's HD files, we're happy to help you test Ludicrous, and we can help set that up for you. And you don't have to make any changes on your end when using the API. It's just an API flag. So we also, in the past year, we had a lot of customers who were asking us about ContentAware bitrate encoding. And whenever customers ask us about new capabilities or ask us to support new capabilities, our approach is to look at the market and see what's available, right? We're not about reinventing the wheel. See if there are engines that we can utilize. And we surveyed the market for about 6 months. We looked at lots of different technologies, including the potential of building our own. And we just found that in the end, the technology from Beamer and their frame accurate transcoding was just head and shoulders above everything else that we tested. So we have Beamer. That would probably be the 45th engine that we've incorporated into our platform. It's, if you're basically, you can take the same bit rate and maximize the video quality, or you can maintain the quality and use less bit rates. So it depends on whether the video quality is your priority or if cost is your priority. If cost is the priority, then you would maintain the bit rate and you would maximize the best quality video for that bit rate. If you want the best looking video, then you can let the technology do its magic and not worry so much about the bit rate. So we have found, by the way, we can do testing for you if you're interested in that. So we can do some perceptual analysis tools and visual analysis and compare regular transcoding with Beamer transcoding on our platform. And our Zach, who mentioned earlier, and our solutions team would be happy to help with that. So, we've also, as we're finding with a lot of our customers, there's starting to be a convergence of B2B or broadcast workflows with the digital or direct-to-consumer workflows. That said, there's still their own set of challenges and different set of capabilities to support those workflows that are for broadcast television, cable television, or B2B pipelines. Things like certifying MPEG transport teams with H.264 output. Using ProRes, by the way, ProRes is something that we built with Apple. So I think that we're the only vendor in market in the cloud that supports all of the ProRes flavors in a 64-bit Linux engine, and it's Apple certified, both for input and output. If you are familiar with working with broadcast with subtitles and captions, how very difficult that can be, especially when you're dealing with compliance. So we have a broad input-output support for subtitles and captions, and working with complex audio, right? And basically, you can send us 16, I think it's up to 16 mono tracks that you can assign to different channels, and that we can output both surround sound and standard stereo outputs as well. Doing assembly for frame accurate clipping and dealing with standards conversion. So, making sure that, with telecine and not losing any quality basically when you're dealing with standards conversion, because that's a big issue. And so we've incorporated some new engines and some new tools to help support all that. Again, I don't want to get too technical on this. If you have questions or you want to get deeper into this, we can bring Zach at the end of the call, or just communicate offline. So QC is interesting, right? So automated QC in the cloud. Several years ago, as some of our larger customers had already migrated their VOD workflows to Encoding.com in the cloud, they were still running QC, quality control workflows on premise. So they had asked us if we could run QC in the cloud. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we sort of surveyed the market, what's available out there. And in this case, we decided that the best approach was actually to build our own engine, our own QC engine. And ours is unique in a few ways. One, there's a number of validations and checks, of course, for audio and video, but also we now have a number of checks for the adaptive bitrate package manifests for HLS and Dash, and et cetera. So you can run manifest checks as well as audio and QC checks. We also will do the QC in parallel with the transcoding. So if you're familiar with traditional QC workflows, you're basically sending videos off to the appliance, getting the QC results, then sending the videos off to your transcoders. In our case, you send it to us once, and we're going to do the transcoding and QC in parallel, and you get the QC reports as basically an extended notification back from us. So it's much more efficient, frankly. And you can decide via an API call whether or not you want to run all of the API, all of the QC checks, or just a select few that you want to check. You have total control over all of that. Finally, security and protecting your content is critical. And again, I don't want to get too technical here, but if you saw in the news recently that Warner Brothers, I think it was yesterday or recently, announced that they're now even taking theatrical content and going direct to consumer when they go straight to the theaters. So we're now talking about working with pre-release content and very very premium content in general. So we always, Encoding.com has focused a large amount of our resources on security and speed. We've recently launched some of the things that are on the screen here. Assumed role permits organizations to very tightly define the permissions associated with individual API calls, ensuring that the scope of each request is limited to the minimum needed to actually support that workflow. SNS notifications, we recently added support for, to support Amazon's simple notification service, so you can fan out messages to a large number of subscriber endpoints for parallel processing, including the AWS Lambda functions and HTTPS webhooks. Pre-sign URLs, we now support for S3 for basically source and destination links, so you can set link and credentials to expire after a specific time. We continue to add DRM, more DRM support. So the way that Encoding.com fits into the DRM ecosystem is that depending on what DRM encryption you want to support, whether it's Fair Play or Widevine or PlayReady or what have you, we support just about everything. We will encrypt your content in that DRM technology and register the keys with whatever third-party key management server that you're using. So we have integrations with a bunch of different KMS key management server platforms already, but we can also integrate with yours if necessary. And we do support CPICs now, which means that a new integration is actually quite simple. So finally, I like to have a slide on why Encoding.com. You have a number of different options out in the market for cloud-based transcoding or on-prem transcoding for that matter. But what makes us unique? I think that we've been operating an API-based cloud-native web service at massive scale for over a decade now, and we believe that we're the only vendor that can actually boast all of the things that are on the screen here. We have a very, very mature platform now. As I mentioned earlier, processed over 1 billion videos, and we're supporting over 1 trillion API requests a year now. Blazingly fast processing. So, we focus on speed of ingest, how to make sure that your queue time, once we ingest your video, that it's not sitting there before, how long before processing begins. For us, it's an average of seconds. How fast can we process that content? And by using Ludicrous, or even assigning different cores and different amounts of cores, depending on, we have algorithms that we utilize depending on how big the videos are. We're engine agnostic. As I mentioned earlier, we have 45 different engines running today. Next year, if we do this webinar again, Phil, which I hope we do, that number might be 52 engines. You know, we're constantly adding new engines to add to the scope of capabilities. And you know, we don't really care if those engines are open source or we built them or it's commercial, meaning we use the best technology that we can that meet our customer requirements. So, you know, other vendors out there sometimes are reliant on their only using their own IP. And we have found that that can be restrictive. You know, we have a massive feature set for VOD processing, as I mentioned earlier. It's the only thing we do. So we have a huge support for all the formats coming in for source ingest, whether it's broadcast codecs or edit codecs, and on the out for delivery codecs, for lots of subtitle formats, DRM encryption formats, audio formats, etc. And as I mentioned, that you know, our approach where you integrate our API once and your workflows are future proofed, because as we add these new capabilities, you know, all you're doing is modifying your XML or JSON to take advantage of that. And in fact, with a lot of our customers, Zach and our team of solutions engineers will actually give you the XML and JSON you need to accomplish that goal. So, you know, we're happy to help with that heavy lifting. And we have, you know, expertise building these custom solutions for large media and entertainment brands for a very long time. And, you know, some of the biggest brands in the world. So with that, I'm going to conclude. I think I nailed that in about 30 minutes. Hopefully I wasn't talking too quickly. I did have a coffee right before we started this. But Phil, if you want to open it up to questions, that would be great. And thank you for attending, everybody.
Thanks very much, Jeff. That was great. Now, are there any questions? Feel free to use either the chat or the Q&A function. But in the meantime, I just wanted to get back to your the beginning of your presentation there, Jeff. You mentioned there in 2019 there was something like 19.8 petabytes of files processed. How is that grown this year, given that many people have been at home under lockdown conditions and nothing to do but watch streaming?
Yeah, you know, from our existing customers, we've actually seen tremendous growth this year, as you would expect. VOD has exploded this year. But it's not just for our premium media and entertainment companies. You know, we've seen tremendous growth within customers who focus, you know, on churches and religion or enterprise, or you know, lots of different verticals. Or e-learning has grown tremendously. Just as you said, Phil, as so many people now are experiencing these videos at home and frankly have more time at home, that we have seen. So I don't know what the actual number is for 2020 yet. It might be double that number. It might be in the high 30s, somewhere around that, of petabytes ingested. Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
All right. Now we do have a question from Krishna Vijayanagar. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. What is your plan for supporting MPEG's 3 new codecs, VVC, EVC, and LC-EVC?
Great question. So I'm going to answer it a little more broadly. Excuse me. Encoding.com doesn't really build support for capabilities or formats until there's demand or from our customers or demand from a specific customer. So, you know, we've taken it on the chin over the years of sort of getting ahead of the market and putting a lot of work into guessing which direction the market might be heading. So rather, you know, we've looked at those technologies and those formats, so we've, you know, a good sense of what it would take to incorporate the latest and greatest formats that you're talking about. Today, we're not supporting that at this point because we don't have any customers yet requiring us to support those formats. So once somebody, you know, or multiple customers require it from us, you know, then we prioritize that in our roadmap, and usually within a month, we're supporting it. But today, we don't yet support those.
Okay. Now we have a question from James Miner in Singapore. What about live video processing and delivery, for example, sporting events?
Yep, great question. So Encoding.com used to support live transcoding workflows. We made a strategic decision as a company several years ago to focus 100% on VOD workflows just because we thought it was challenging enough. And it was we believe we're the best in the world at that. Where on the live transcoding workflow side, our largest customers weren't really looking to us to support that for them. So today within the live world, we support live to VOD workflows, but not live to live streaming workflows.
Okay. Now we have a question here. Do you support a GUI for job submission or just an API?
Yeah, great question. The answer is yes. So we have a customer portal that you can log into. There's lots of cool features you can utilize within this portal. One of them is that you can use a GUI to run one job. There's you can use drop downs. You can get access to all of our presets. We have hundreds of presets available that you can start with and then modify those presets to meet your specific workflow requirements. You can also set up watch folders. So if you're not familiar with watch folders, it's basically you point us to a directory somewhere and a frequency at how often you want us to pay attention to that directory. As you drop new content in that directory, we recognize that, we ingest it, and we process it and deliver it out. And you can set up that watch folder and what the output requirements are in the GUI as well. You can also get real-time access to your encoding queue. So you can see which videos are in process, which ones have processed. We're very transparent about times for all the steps in the encoding process as well.
Okay, now you did mention support for multi-language and multi-track audio. I just wondered if you could get into that into a bit more depth, given that we're in the APAC region and there are so many different requirements for different language programming.
Well, here's the question now. I'm finally going to hand it off to Zach, because as we get more technical, it starts to get above my pay grade.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you, Philip, for the question. So in terms of multi-language, there are a couple of ways that we can go about that. If the languages are embedded in the source video, we could obviously mux them over to the output. But if you even have separate audio files that contain different languages, we could use those files to mux in the audio to the output as well. So that's the multi-language part. Jeff had touched on a little bit about multi-track or multi-channel audio. If you're doing 7.1 or 5.1, we can certainly carry that over to the output side, or we can mix that down to stereo audio as well. So whenever the customer does have audio requirements, we will want to dig into those a little bit, just because we want to know if you're talking about languages or if you're talking about surround sound, because that will kind of dictate how the job request is crafted.
Okay.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. So I guess you also mentioned DRM, which is quite a hot topic in this part of the world as well. So how do you work with securing clients' content?
Well, specific to DRM, I mean, there's lots of security features around, but specific to DRM, the customer will dictate which DRM encryption you'd like us to utilize, which technology. Let's use, FairPlay as an example, Apple FairPlay. So we will encrypt your content using FairPlay, and then the keys that are generated for that encryption for that job, we're going to register those keys with whatever key management server that you, the customer, are utilizing. And once we hand off the keys and we've encrypted the content and delivered the content to wherever you're hosting it from, Encoding.com is no longer in that process. So the end user player and the handshake with the KMS is not done by Encoding.com. That's done by your player and the KMS that you're using. So we'll encrypt the content, register the keys, deliver the content, and then we're done with that part of the DRM process.
All right, just getting back to the ludicrous processing.
Great.
Now it sounds very fast. Are there any caveats on that? Are there any limitations, or is the sky the limit?
No, it's really the caveat is how much compute is available to us in that particular data center. I think that's the only caveat, because we standardized on chunking these large files into 10-minute chunks, and then doing that processing in parallel, stitching it back together again. And even with 10-minute chunks, let's say you take a 90-minute movie that's HD. If you're processing that typically, that you might see a 1-to-1 relation. It'll take about a little faster than 90 minutes to process that file. Using Ludicrous, we'll process that in about 20 minutes. So you're getting significantly accelerated processing times because we're using so many instances in parallel. There is an additional cost to using that because we are using more compute. But frankly, we're now many years ago, we had a turbo feature, and turbo basically told us to use more compute to process a piece of content faster. And over time, we realized that we can process faster and use less time of that instance. We don't actually need to charge customers more for that. So turbo became default. We're starting to look at that with Ludicrous now. So today there is an additional fee for Ludicrous, but within a certain amount of time, within a year maybe, I don't even know we're going to charge more for Ludicrous because we'll be processing content so much faster, and we can use those instances for processing the next jobs. So that's where it stands today.
Okay, so what's the business model? What does the customer need to know from their end?
Yeah, great question. So our main business model, we have several, but the main one our customers use is what we call our on-demand model, and it's based on a per gigabyte of source and output. So there are other competitors out there that use per minute of output models. It's really 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. It comes down to what is the rate per gigabyte that we charge, and that will fluctuate depending on the commitment. So a customer who is processing a petabyte of content annually through us has a different per gigabyte rate than a customer who's processing 10 terabytes of content. So basically is we're calculating the source content in and the process content out multiplied by that per gigabyte rate. And the deals tend to look like CDN contracts, if you're familiar with that, where you'll commit to a minimum number of gigabytes for a year to set that per gigabyte rate. We also have another model that we have more than 2 handfuls of customers utilizing, which we call the reserved cloud model. And this is a fixed monthly cost for a set number of instances for an all-you-can-process model. So we can help you figure out, based on your workflow volume, that seems to be pretty steady. You need 3 instances a month to handle the majority of your workload. So using 3 RCIs, we call them reserved cloud instances, that's going to be the most cost-effective model. And you have the ability to burst into the on-demand model when you need to spike or priority jobs, et cetera. So that's a second model we offer as well.
Okay, and what's your presence like in APAC in terms of the data centers you're working with, and I guess connectivity, which varies across the region?
Well, Zach, are you familiar with which AWS regions we're in?
Yes, I am, Jeff. So we are currently in Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, Seoul, Mumbai.
Thank you. So that means the customer in that API call or in the watch folder setup will set what region they want us to process the content in. So if depending where you're, which data center you're closest to, you basically just set the region flag at the beginning of the API call that will tell us to ingest and process your content in that region. If we're ingesting from S3 in a particular region, we're going to process it in that region. And in fact, we can actually start processing the content as we're ingesting it. We don't need to download the file first. So it can be very efficient.
Okay, we've got another question here from Albert DeWitt. Now, he asks, do you have any visibility of resources and a way to control oversubscription of resources?
I'm not sure what the question is asking for, meaning would one customer's workflow that gets very heavy, would that affect another customer's workflow? If that's the question, absolutely not. Because we are spinning up and spinning down as many instances that we need to in real time to meet that real-time customer demand. We've never hit any walls whatsoever, and we've processed insane amount of parallel jobs for Google and Facebook and others. So that hasn't been an issue, if that's what the question was intending.
Okay. Let's see. Albert says thanks. So I guess you answered the question. Well done. All right. Now I guess one of the other things that you did mention was QC. I'm just wondering, could you go into a bit more detail there?
Sure, Zach, I'm going to hand that one to you as well.
Sure. So with our QC feature, we have two ways that you could go about that. With our auto QC, we perform 40 different checks, slightly over 40 different checks against the output video. The customer would simply set up a way to be notified to have that QC report delivered. It will either give you a pass or warning or fail. And then from there, the customer could go back in and look at the job request or see what's off. Obviously, something they can't control, they would reach out to support, and someone on our support team would be able to help them resolve that QC error that they're seeing. Additionally, if the auto QC is not covering all the checks that you would like to perform, you could set up more of a manual QC list of checks, and I think that goes all the way upwards of almost 80 or 90 different checks that you could enable in a job request.
Yeah, so it gets very specific across video, audio, manifests. And as I mentioned earlier, because we built the engine, our QC engine, we have customers telling us all day long what validations they need that we might not yet support, and then we add that validation. And we also use open source tools like Netflix's VMath, perceptual analyzer, that we can run reports for you as well. And so we continually to build this out, our QC feature set, and utilize other open source tools as well.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple of more questions if people want to put them in the Q&A or the chat. In the meantime, I was just wondering about what are your thoughts on the industry going forward next year?
Well, there's a lot of different directions we could take that question. You know, one of the things that I'm looking forward to is, you know, our existing customers kept us very busy this year, which was fantastic. And however, you know, there's been a bit of a slowdown on, you know, some of the larger media and entertainment and telco companies that are in migration from on-prem to cloud, where because of COVID and everything that we've all had to deal with, you know, had to focus on business continuity or other priorities. So I'm looking forward to sort of, you know, picking up of new opportunities, of new accounts, of working with new companies who can now focus more attention on migrating from on-prem to cloud. You know, from all the conversations that we have with existing customers or prospects, it's really no longer a question about, you know, if we should be migrating to the cloud, it's when. And that was very different than 10 years ago when, you know, or 12 years ago when we started this business. So it's great to see that, not without its challenges. But I think that the VOD explosion that we're all experiencing this year is here to stay. You know, I don't see that changing very much. You know, as long as, you know, iPhone and Androids keep driving, you know, new technologies and supporting new, latest and greatest formats, then we will as well.
Okay, we do have a couple more questions. So from Nanda Kumar Seshadri, do you have any plans to support Dolby AC4?
Zach, do we support Dolby AC4?
Yes, we do.
So we already support it.
You already support it. Okay. Now, from James Miner in Singapore again, just on the subject of video processing, does Encode.com processing include PSNR analysis and other quality of experience analysis of the video that you process?
Yeah, we have those capabilities now. I'm not sure if it's fully productized yet. In other words, I'm not sure, and Zach, you could you know, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if it's available in the API yet, but I know that we do a lot of that work for customers. It might be more on a manual basis, but that's certainly the direction we're moving in.
Yeah, that is on our roadmap, Jeff. So I think that's something that customers would
Yeah.
probably see in the new year.
Yeah, we're already using tools and engines. We just haven't productized it yet in the API.
All right. Let's see. James says thanks. So
Thank you, James.
there don't seem to be any other questions. Did you want to summarize and wrap up, Jeff?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, everybody. I know everyone is very busy these days as we're trying to close out the year. So appreciate you joining today and lending us your ear. If you would like to discuss further, if you'd like to get your hands dirty with a demo, we can make that very easy for you and set up with free demo accounts. If you have more specific technical or business questions, please reach out directly to ben.morell@encoding.com. You can see on the slide here, or I'm just Jeff, Jeff @encoding.com, and you're welcome to reach out to me directly. I'm sure I've met some of you over the many years at various conferences, but I look forward to meeting those of you I haven't. So thank you again. And thank you, Phil.
All right. Thanks very much, Jeff. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. And we'll see you hopefully in the future.
Great. Thank you. Happy holidays to everybody. Thank you.